Professor John Blaxland is Professor in Intelligence Studies and International Security at the Australian National University. Thank you for being on the programme. The UN Security Council will be holding an emergency meeting today about what has happened this week in Myanmar. What are your hopes that international pressure will make a difference?
Yeah, no, thank you, Sally. We all hope that international pressure will make a difference and that Min Aung Hlaing, the Commander-in-Chief of the Burmese military, the Tatmadaw, will see sense and will see that this is actually a retrograde move, not just for him personally, but for the country. The problem is, of course, that when you look at what's actually transpired and you look back at the roadmap to democracy that was mapped out in 2003, you see that really it wasn't a highway so much as a bit of a cul-de-sac. The plan was to establish a constitution, which was done in 2008 during the Cyclone Nargis, when a lot of calamity was happening there. But that constitution basically set up so that the military would remain in control regardless of the popular will. And what surprised Min Aung Hlaing and many in the military is that Aung San Suu Kyi has been so popular that even despite having designed this constitution to constrain democracy, to constrain the the NLD, the power of the electorate, with 83% voting in favour of the NLD, has really scared the horses in the military, intimidated Min Aung Hlaing, who himself is due to retire mid next year, and who obviously had political aspirations to continue. That wasn't going to happen with a parliament, a Luthor, controlled by the NLD and by an ascendant Aung San Suu Kyi. So what to do? Clip the wings. And of course, that's in a context where that roadmap to democracy back in 2003 and 2008 was in a context where they really needed Europe and the UK, Australia, the United States, Japan and others to support them because they wanted sanctions lifted. They've now had a decade of those sanctions largely removed, some reimposed following the Rohingya crisis. But essentially the great power dynamics have shifted. We know now that Myanmar is much more beholden to China, and China really is much more cavalier when it comes to democratic principles.
Well, I was just going to ask you about China and how critical China's relationship is with Myanmar, because with China and Beijing saying, look, this is an internal affair, not to be interfered with, and yet China's investing quite a bit, isn't it, in Myanmar? So if US sanctions are imposed or other countries impose sanctions, will it really have an impact if they have investment coming in from China?
Quite limited. The thing is that Myanmar has become all the more important for China. The oil and gas pipeline from Chakpu, the port in the Bay of Bengal, through to Yunnan is really a significant part of China's efforts to diversify, to mitigate the risks of the jugular vein, if you like, for China, the Malacca Straits, just to the southeast of there. And the investment in Myanmar has been going on for a couple of decades now. And Min Aung Hlaing is thick in with Xi. The relationship is it's a little bit frosty and prickly because of the border issues with the various rebel groups. But essentially, there's a recognition, there's a bit of a Faustian bargain between Min Aung Hlaing and the Tatmadaw and Xi and the People's Republic of China. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with limited leverage.
All right.
And essentially, it's a good question. I mean, the reason why the leverage is limited is because Myanmar doesn't need us as much as they did a decade ago.
Sure, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but we're out of time. Professor John Blaxland, thank you though for your analysis. And there is so much more detail as well on our website, of course, as to what is unfolding there. But we have to move on to other stories. Looking at Spain now, which was one of the hardest hit countries